Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something really fundamental. This fascinating and, well, complex idea of understanding.
It really is.
We've got a great collection of sources here that dive into what this means for us humans and also for the rapidly evolving world of AI.
That's right. We're really embarking on a pretty comprehensive exploration today, looking at this crucial cognitive function, not just technically, but also through history, development, philosophy.
Gotta get the whole picture.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The goal is to really get to the heart of what it means to understand.
Right. So our mission today, for you, the learner, is basically to pull out the most important insights about understanding in both humans and AI, and really shine a light on their similarities, but maybe more importantly, their crucial differences.
And that brings us right to the core question. What does it truly mean to understand? Is it just, processing information, or there's something deeper going on?
Yeah, what is that extra bit?
And how does this capacity, whatever we decide it is, differ between us and the machines we're building? We're hoping to uncover some, surprising facts and definitely some thought-provoking distinctions today.
Okay, let's try and unpack this idea of understanding itself then. Our sources make it pretty clear it goes way beyond just remembering facts.
Oh yeah, much more. It involves real comprehension, grasping the context around something.
Being able to reason with it.
Right, and ultimately making meaning out of it. So it's not just about the amount of information processed, is it? It's the quality of that understanding.
That ability to connect the dots, maybe? See the bigger picture?
Precisely. And the key field for studying all this, as our sources point out, is cognitive science.
Right, that mix of fields.
Yeah, it's this interdisciplinary area bringing together psychology, philosophy, computer science, linguistics, neuroscience, even anthropology, all to give us a more unified picture of intelligence, however it shows up.
Which is super important because when you start comparing human intelligence to AI, those initial distinctions, they're pretty stark, aren't they?
They really are. Humans, we're adaptable, we can think abstractly, we're, inherently creative in ways.
And our understanding often feels very personal, very subjective.
Whereas AI, at least where it is now, it really shines at that rapid data processing, finding patterns in just massive data sets, and doing specific tasks very efficiently.
But the abstract thinking, that originality, that's where it often struggles.
Right. There's a really good comparison in our material. It calls AI's current understanding a kind of statistical construct.
Meaning?
Meaning it's incredibly good at finding correlations in the data it's fed. But human understanding is described as a dynamic, embodied, and often subjective interpretation of the world.
Ah, okay. So it's just a fundamentally different way of, engaging with information.
Absolutely. And to really get how human understanding develops, we kind of need to look at some foundational theories. Jean Piaget's stage theory, that's a classic.
Right. He suggested kids actively build their understanding step by step through this process. What was it? Equilibration.
Equilibration, yeah. It's all about finding that mental balance. When you hit something new that doesn't quite fit what you already think.
You either try to shoehorn it into your existing ideas, that's assimilation.
Or you actually adjust your thinking, your mental frameworks to accommodate the new information.
Got it. Assimilation or accommodation.
Exactly. And through this constant cycle, our mental structures, our schemas, they keep evolving. Piaget laid out 4 key stages in how this happens.
Okay, let's walk through those. First up, the sensoromotor stage, birth to about 2 years.
Yep. And here, babies are like little scientists, as this source says, really learning through touching, tasting, seeing, moving.
And a huge milestone here is object permanence, right? Understanding things still exist even when you can't see them.
Which usually kicks in around 8 months.
Yeah.
But interestingly, even after they get object permanence, infants can still make the A not B error.
Ah, I remember this. They look for a toy where they found it before, even if they saw you hide it somewhere new.
Exactly. And the key takeaway here isn't just the error itself, but this stepwise, sometimes surprising way our minds construct understanding. It's so different from the sort of immediate competence we often aim for with AI.
Okay, then stage 2, pre-operational. Ages, what, 2 to 7?
Roughly, yeah. Kids start using language, doing pretend play, which is huge. But their thinking isn't fully logical yet. They're often egocentric.
Seeing everything from their own perspective?
Pretty much. And this is where that precausal thinking pops up. Things like believing inanimate objects have feelings, animism.
Or thinking mountains were built by giants, maybe?
Okay.
Artificialism?
Right, and connecting unrelated events, that's transductive reasoning. Or just lumping things together because they happen at the same time, syncretism.
And they make those cognitive errors too, like focusing on just one aspect. That's centration.
Yeah, and struggling with conservation, like knowing the amount of water stays the same even if you pour it into a different shaped glass.
And irreversibility they can't easily mentally undo in action. The source said their thinking is really perception-bound, focused on states rather than transformations.
Exactly. Very tied to the here and now, visually. Then comes the concrete operational stage, about 7 to 11.
Okay, so thinking gets more logical now.
Yes, but mainly when dealing with concrete, real-world things they can see or manipulate. They get concepts like volume, time, numbers. They can classify things, understand actions can be reversed.
And they can reason inductively, like from specific examples to a general idea.
They can start doing that, yes,
Yeah.
but abstract problems, still tough. And Piaget noted that horizontal décalage.
Which means...
It means understanding doesn't unlock all at once. A kid might grasp conservation of mass, like with clay, before they grasp conservation of volume with the water example.
So development isn't perfectly even across different concepts. That's interesting.
It really highlights the gradual build. Finally, there's the formal operational stage, starting around age 12, heading into adulthood.
This is where abstract thought really kicks in.
Exactly. Thinking about hypotheticals, possibilities, tackling complex problems systematically, hypothetico-deductive reasoning, forming a hypothesis and testing it out. More sophisticated inference.
You know, looking back at Piaget, what really stands out is how gradual and, uneven human understanding develops. Those errors, the décalage, it really drives that home.
It does. And it's such a contrast to how we often approach AI development, sort of aiming for this instant, generalized competence.
Okay, now shifting gears slightly. Lev Vygotsky. His sociocultural theory offers a different perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. He argued that learning actually comes before development, and that our culture deeply shapes how we think.
So Piaget focused on the individual child building knowledge, but Vygotsky emphasized the social side.
Precisely. He stressed learning through interaction with more knowledgeable others, or MKOs, parents, teachers, even peers sometimes.
Right, and he talked about the zone of proximal development, the ZPD.
Which is that crucial space between what someone can do alone and what they can achieve with guidance from an MKO.
And that guidance, that help, that's scaffolding.
Exactly. Providing support, then gradually pulling back as the learner gets more capable, like training wheels.
Vygotsky also had that interesting idea about inner speech, didn't he? That talking to yourself phase kids go through.
He did. He argued that egocentric speech doesn't just vanish. It gets internalized, becomes our inner voice, that internal monologue we use to think and regulate ourselves.
That makes sense.
And here's another key difference with AI. Current AI learning just lacks this rich, dynamic, embodied social context that Vygotsky saw as absolutely central.
Yeah, AI learns from data, massive amounts of it, but not from that back and forth with a knowledgeable person, not within a culture.
Not from those MKOs in our lives, no. It's a very different learning environment.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit now and look at some of the philosophical roots of understanding. Our sources take us way back. Ancient Greece.
Yeah, the birthplace of Western philosophy, really. Moving away from purely myth-based explanations towards rational inquiry about the world.
People like Thales looking for a single underlying principle.
Exactly, a first principle. And Heraclitus talking about logos, this sort of inherent order or reason in the universe.
Then Socrates shifted focus, right? More towards ethics and morality, using that questioning method.
Absolutely. And Plato, his student, with the theory of forms, this idea that true reality lies in these perfect abstract concepts.
And Aristotle followed, getting much more systematic, looking at categories, causes, and laying down the foundations of formal logic.
Right. And during this whole period, you see the emergence of ideas about a rational, natural order, natural law, concepts that shaped thinking for centuries.
Okay, fast forward quite a bit to the Enlightenment. A huge shift, wasn't it? Reason becomes paramount.
Totally. Challenging tradition, embracing skepticism, the scientific method really taking hold, and the success of mathematics really boosted this faith in reason.
And Kant was a major figure here.
Huge. Emphasizing the active role of our own minds in structuring experience. Plus, his work on ethics and universal duties.
Then we hit modern philosophy, 19th to 20th centuries. Philosophy becomes more, professionalized.
Yeah, more of an academic discipline. You get German idealism with Hegel, then thinkers like Schopenhauer and Nietzsche exploring the role of will.
Pragmatism emerges too, judging ideas by their practical value.
Right, and then the two big streams in the 20th century. Analytics philosophy, focusing hard on logic, language, clarity, thinkwich, Frege, Russell, Wittgenstein.
And continental philosophy, diving more into subjective experience, interpretation, Freedom Husserl, Heidegger, Sartre, postmodernism.
What this whole historical tour really shows is that our very definition of understanding hasn't stayed still. It's evolved dramatically.
So what counted as understanding for the ancient Greeks is pretty different from the Enlightenment ideal, and different again from modern views.
Exactly, which makes this goal of achieving human-level understanding in AI incredibly tricky. It's not like we're aiming for a fixed target. The target itself keeps moving based on our own evolving grasp of knowledge.
That definitely complicates things, and this brings us to maybe the thorniest issue, consciousness. Our sources talk about qualia and intentionality.
Right. Qualia, those are the raw, subjective feels, what it's like to see red or taste coffee or feel pain, your private experience.
And intentionality.
That's the aboutness of our thoughts. Our mental states are always directed towards something. You don't just believe. You believe that something is true. You don't just desire. You desire something.
And there's a debate, isn't there, about whether qualia are just a byproduct of intentionality.
There is. Can subjective feeling be reduced to the directedness of thought? But looming over all that is the hard problem of consciousness.
How does subjective experience arise from purely physical stuff, like neurons firing?
Exactly. It's a huge mystery. And the relevance here is, if human understanding is deeply tied to qualia, to that subjective experience,
then AI, being computational and objective, is missing that dimension right now.
pretty much, AI's understanding of your search query is functional. It gets the job done. But does it have that inner, phenomenal feeling of understanding? That's the big question mark.
Okay, let's think about how understanding plays out in, well, everyday human life and across different fields. Belief systems, for instance.
Right. These networks of ideas we hold, they really shape our internal reality, don't they?
And they're not always logical, but they're powerful. Built on assumptions, often political, religious, social.
And interconnected. Change one core belief, and it can send ripples through the whole system.
Which is why they can be so resistant to change. Even with contradictory evidence, they get tangled up with our identity, our culture.
Absolutely. So human understanding isn't just processing isolated facts. It's about integrating information into this existing, often deeply personal and culturally shaped web of beliefs.
Which raises another big question for AI, doesn't it? How can AI really grasp human reality without that capacity for subjective belief, without being embedded in a culture?
It highlights this deeply personal, culturally mediated layer to our understanding that AI currently lacks.
Our sources also touch on cultural evolution, how societies change through learned behaviors passed down by teaching, imitation.
Yeah, initially there was that sort of ladder view, unilinear evolution, suggesting all cultures follow the same path, which has been rightly criticized.
Now it's more about multilinear paths, different trajectories.
Right. And dual inheritance theory, or gene culture coevolution, the idea that our biology and our culture constantly shape each other over time.
So our understanding isn't static, it's adaptive, shaped by this incredibly long history, both biological and cultural.
Whereas AI's understanding is fundamentally tied to its training data, a snapshot in time. It lacks that deep historical evolutionary context.
And we see understanding at work differently across scientific fields, too, like genetics and math.
Totally. Math gives us the tools to make sense of genetic data probabilities, statistical analysis. The source even says math gives genetic data real meaning. Bioinformatics relies heavily on it for complex calculations, like the Human Genome Project.
Makes sense. And biology and physics connect, too. Quantum biology, biophysics.
Yeah, looking at life processes through the lens of physics, quantum effects in genes, the physical forces governing proteins. It shows how interconnected scientific understanding can be.
In physics itself, discovery isn't just data collection, is it? It's observation, questioning, sharing ideas, that scientific state of mind.
Becquerel discovering radioactivity is a great example. He noticed an anomaly, something unexpected, and his scientific understanding allowed him to connect the dots and realize its importance. That aha moment.
And underpinning so much of this is the link between math and logic.
Absolutely. Math sharpens logical reasoning, analyzing problems, seeing patterns, deductive thinking. Mathematical logic gives us these formal systems for structured reasoning. helping us avoid biases.
So what this all shows is that human scientific understanding often involves synthesizing ideas across fields, having those breakthrough insights.
Which current AI, despite being amazing at processing data within a field, really struggles with. That holistic view, that potential for paradigm shifts, seems limited for now.
Okay, so we've got a pretty solid foundation now on the human side of understanding. Let's dive deeper into the AI perspective. When we talk about AI understanding, we need to be careful, right? It's not the same as just pattern recognition.
Definitely not. Machine learning is fantastic at finding those patterns in huge data sets and making predictions. But true AI understanding, if we can call it that, implies reasoning, learning independently, having real contextual awareness.
And there's still a big gap there.
A significant one. One major limitation is concept learning. Humans often grasp a new idea from just one or two examples and can then generalize it.
AI finds that much harder, especially with seemingly simple things like left, right, big, small.
Exactly. It needs tons of examples usually. And then there's that semantic distinction we talked about.
The difference between functional understanding and real meaning.
Right. AI understands your command based on statistical correlations it learned. It doesn't have that subjective comprehension of meaning that humans do.
Yeah.
It works, but the internal process is likely very different.
And it struggles with abstract thought, drawing subtle conclusions from the past, real innovation.
Yeah, it's great at extrapolation, extending patterns it's seen. But generating truly novel concepts from scratch, that seems uniquely human for now.
We see examples of this, right? Like in visual question answering, if you tweak the question slightly.
It can throw the AI off completely. Or image recognition, where it fails to separate different features properly. It also struggles with ambiguity, cause and effect, counterfactuals, thinking about what if.
And the sources use that word brittleness to describe current AI.
Yes, meaning it can fail in unexpected ways, and it doesn't generalize well outside the specific data it was trained on. It often needs careful monitoring. Its understanding is context-dependent, but lacks those robust, flexible mental models we have.
So what are the main computational approaches trying to bridge this gap? We had symbolic AI first, didn't we?
Right, the classic approach. Representing knowledge explicitly with symbols, rules, logic. Good at reasoning, formal stuff like ontologies. But it struggled with the messy, real-world data and learning on its own.
Then came the connectionist wave, deep neural networks.
Yeah, learning from vast data sets, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning. Amazing at high-dimensional data, pattern recognition. But often a black box, hard to know why it made a decision. Less good at explicit reasoning.
So one's like top-down rules, the other's bottom-up patterns.
Kind of, yeah. That's the philosophical or computational divide. Rule-following versus pattern-matching intelligence. And neither one alone seems to capture the richness of human understanding.
Which logically leads to hybrid approaches, neurosymbolic AI or NISI AI.
Exactly. Trying to combine the strengths of both, get the learning power of neural nets with the reasoning and interpretability of symbolic systems.
What are the hopes for NISI?
Well, the potential is there for better interpretability, needing less data to learn, generalizing better, stronger reasoning, maybe even getting closer to how we think with our mix of intuitive pattern matching and deliberate reasoning, like Kahneman's System 1 and System 2.
The sources list strengths, but also limitations, right?
Oh, definitely. Integrating these fundamentally different approaches is hard. Making them scale efficiently is a challenge. Managing knowledge so both parts can use it is tricky. How do you even evaluate these hybrid systems properly? And there isn't one single theory uniting all the different NESI efforts yet.
But it's clearly a direction people are exploring, towards a more composite understanding.
Absolutely. And related to that are logical neural networks, LNNs.
Okay, what's the core idea there?
There's a specific type of neurosymbolic system where the neural network structure directly mirrors logical formulas. It uses real-valued logic, handling uncertainty.
So the network's calculations are logical deductions.
Essentially, yes. This allows for deductive inference, even zero-shot reasoning on things it hasn't seen. The neurons act like fuzzy logic gates.
That sounds powerful for building and reasoning and making it more transparent.
It is. They can incorporate prior knowledge, learn while minimizing contradictions, handle incomplete information better. It's moving towards a kind of formal understanding where predictions are logically derivable. And maybe towards more general any-task learning.
And beyond LNNs, there are broader reasoning AI models, too.
Yes, models explicitly designed to mimic human cognitive processes, logic, context, adaptation. They often use neurosymbolic techniques, reinforcement learning, things like probabilistic logic networks or transformer models adapted for reasoning.
Using knowledge graphs, too?
Often, yes. Building these structured representations of knowledge allows for more complex, multi-step reasoning, connecting information across different domains. This is really pushing towards cognitive AI, aiming for genuine cognitive abilities, not just computation.
So the trajectory seems clear, moving from pattern matching towards reasoning, causality, maybe even a more nuanced grasp of context.
That's the hope. And this progress, or even the attempt at it, has huge implications for us individually and as a society.
Let's talk about those impacts, starting with individuals and how we interact. Social understanding seems key.
It really is. Social life is this constant dance between converging with others and asserting our own views, driven by trying to understand each other.
Even those classic Ash conformity studies. The sources point out that most people didn't conform.
Exactly. 2/3 disagreed, often driven by wanting to tell the truth as they saw it. It shows that complex interplay between social pressure and individual understanding.
And even kids are quite savvy, evaluating testimony, balancing trust with what they see themselves. They question adults.
It's this ongoing process of figuring out the social world, negotiating agreement and disagreement, which is crucial for development.
But misunderstandings happen easily, especially with different communication styles. The neurodivergent versus neurotypical example is telling.
Right. A broad social question like, tell me about yourself, might feel overwhelming for someone who prefers more concrete, object-based topics. What's intended as connection can feel like pressure.
Different entry points to people's inner worlds.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really makes you appreciate how challenging it would be for an AI to navigate these subtle human nuances when we struggle with them ourselves.
Definitely. Now, zooming out to society, AI and jobs is a big one.
Huge. The sources suggest AI will automate many repetitive, data-heavy tasks. But full replacement in roles needing creativity, critical thinking, empathy, complex problem solving, that seems less likely.
Because those rely on uniquely human abilities, abstract thought, art, self-awareness.
Right. So the narrative should perhaps be more about augmentation, how AI can help us, rather than just replacement.
And we shouldn't forget the human need for involvement, for feeling needed, for the satisfaction of creation and dedication in work.
That's a really important point. It's not just about efficiency.
This brings us back to explainable AI, XAI. Why is it so critical?
Because as AI gets embedded everywhere, especially in high-stakes areas like finance or healthcare, we need to trust it. And trust requires understanding how it reaches its decisions.
So XAI provides that transparency.
That's the goal. Clear insights into AI's reasoning. It's crucial for ethical standards, checking for bias, regulatory compliance, monitoring performance, finding errors. Essentially, for accountability.
It's the bridge for human-AI collaboration and oversight, understanding the AI's limits.
Precisely. But there's a catch. Our current ways of testing AI have limitations too.
How so?
Well, many benchmarks don't really measure genuine understanding, or they only test a narrow range of difficulty. Some models just get good at the specific test they overfit.
So the score looks good, but the actual capability might be shallow.
Exactly. And it's hard to evaluate creativity or innovation. Human evaluations are subjective, prone to biases like judging the first answer differently from the last. Even automated evaluations have their own biases.
So we might be missing unseen failures, the brittleness we talked about earlier.
Very possible. We need more robust, diverse, context-aware evaluation methods that really probe cognitive abilities and don't just rely on benchmark scores. Continuous evaluation with feedback is key.
Okay, turning towards ethics now. Bias in AI is a major headline.
And rightly so. AI learns from data, and if that data reflects societal biases, which it often does, the AI learns and can even amplify those biases.
Like the Amazon hiring tool biased against women.
Classic example. It learned from past hiring data that was already skewed. We see it in facial recognition having higher error rates for certain groups, bias in social media algorithms. It can reinforce real-world inequities.
So ethical data selection and design are critical.
Absolutely. Plus, ongoing monitoring for bias after deployment.
Then there's responsibility and accountability. If a self-driving car causes an accident, who's responsible?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The manufacturer,
The
programmer, the owner, the AI itself. It gets incredibly complex, especially with autonomous systems.
And there's no universal law covering this yet.
No. Responsibility often gets diffused among many stakeholders, which can actually make it harder to prevent harm. We urgently need clearer ethical frameworks, defined roles, and strong human oversight to ensure humans remain ultimately responsible.
Which leads to moral agency and value alignment. How do we design AI to act ethically aligned with our values?
That's maybe the biggest challenge. Our sources bring up the Belmont Report principles, originally for human research ethics, as a useful framework for AI.
Respect for persons, beneficence, and justice.
Yeah, exactly. Respect for persons means respecting autonomy, protecting those of diminished autonomy, informed consent. People need to know the risks and benefits of interacting with AI.
Beneficence, do no harm, maximize benefits, actively work to mitigate biases even if unintended.
Right. Ethical design is core here, and justice, fairness in who benefits and who bears the burdens, ensuring fairness and representation in how AI is designed and deployed.
So these principles help guide us towards aligning AI with human values, prioritizing well-being, safety, dignity.
That's the idea. And a key mechanism for this is keeping a human in the loop or sometimes on the loop.
What's the difference?
Human in the loop, or HITL, usually means active, continuous human participation within the AI process. The AI might need human verification before producing a result. Humans are involved in decision-making, feedback, error correction. Think high-stakes stuff like medical diagnosis or credit scoring.
Okay, constant involvement. And human on the loop.
That's more supervisory. The AI runs, presents results, and a human reviews or intervenes if needed, often after the fact. Maybe for tasks like content moderation or data labeling where some error is tolerable and speed matters more.
So HITL, the more involved version, seems crucial for ethical governance.
Definitely. It allows for refining outputs, catching biases, applying ethical judgment in real time. It helps align the AI with real-world complexities and ensures humans retain that ultimate ethical responsibility. It improves the models and builds trustworthiness.
Okay, looking forward then. What are the key strategies for improving things, both for AI and for us?
For advancing AI understanding, it's continuing that work on neurosymbolic and reasoning AI, combining learning and logic.
Focusing specifically on causality and counterfactuals, getting beyond just correlation.
Yes, that's critical for deeper understanding. And as we said, developing much better evaluation metrics, ones that look at coherence, context, novelty, not just accuracy, to find those hidden flaws.
And for enhancing human understanding.
Promoting critical thinking and information literacy is paramount. We need to be able to evaluate information, spot biases, question assumptions, especially with AI generating so much content.
Practical skills for the modern world.
Absolutely. And fostering interdisciplinary education helps us connect ideas, tackle complex problems, mimicking that synthesis we see in scientific breakthroughs, project-based learning, inquiry, collaboration skills.
And how do we better align the two human and AI understanding?
Well, scaling up explainable AI, XAI, is key for transparency and trust. Widespread adoption of those human-in-the-loop HITL frameworks ensures human judgment remains central.
Keeping humans involved in development and deployment.
Right. And developing strong ethical AI governance, clear policies, diverse ethics committees, regulations that protect rights, and ensure AI serves human well-being, always with human oversight holding the ultimate responsibility.
So wrapping this all up, it feels like the main takeaway is that while AI is incredibly powerful at certain things, it's still quite far from the kind of deep, flexible, subjective understanding that we humans have.
I think that's fair. AI excels at processing, pattern finding specific tasks, but the depth, the adaptability, the consciousness, the cultural embedding, that's still very much the human domain.
And those hybrid AI approaches, and you see reasoning AI, they show promise, but developing and using them ethically requires real care and constant attention.
Absolutely. The ethical dimension can't be an afterthought.
And maybe the most actionable point for all of us is enhancing our own understanding, our critical thinking, our ability to synthesize knowledge. That seems vital for working effectively with AI, not just being overwhelmed by it.
Well said. We need to level up our own skills to navigate this future.
Which leaves us with a final thought, maybe, for you, the learner. As both human intelligence and AI continue to evolve, what aspects of understanding do you think will remain fundamentally uniquely human? And how should we prepare ourselves for a future where these two very different kinds of intelligence interact more and more closely?
That's definitely something to mull over. It really gets to the core of what it means to be human in an increasingly intelligent world. A lot to think about there.
This is DigitView.